Welcome to my channel. My name is... Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Ivo and this is my girlfriend Ines. This time we're going to do something a little bit different than my previous videos. We're going to build an app from scratch using the latest technologies. I'm going to use ASP.NET Core 5 Preview to build the server application, and
I'm going to use Angular 9 as a client app.
We're going to build a Catstagram app. It's essentially an Instagram for cats, and here's the reason why.
If you were wondering.
That's the reason. Okay guys, let's dive into the code.
Okay guys, I'm here in Visual Studio 2019 preview and I'm going to create an ASP.NET Core project by using its latest version, and that's 5. Before we begin, I would like to tell you that if you're new in my channel and if you want to learn advanced C# concepts, hit the subscribe button and make sure you turn the notification bell on. Additionally, I would like to tell you that this video is going to be a live coding, so if we happen to have some bugs or some errors, we're going to fix them during the recording. So I'm going to create an ASP.NET Core project. I'm going to create it catstagram.server, and here's the tricky part. I'm going to use JWT token authorization and authentication, and if I choose the API version of the project template and hit here on individual user accounts, I would see that I cannot store the users right here in my local database. So I'm going to create a model view controller app with individual user authentication, just because it's easier to start from that project template, and I'm just going to need to wire up the JWT and everything is going to work correctly. I don't have to create databases, app settings and so on. It will be created by Visual Studio. This is why I'm choosing model view controller, although our application will be an API. So I'm going to choose ASP.NET Core 5 and I'm going to hit create. If you don't see the ASP.NET Core 5 in your Visual Studio, you just need to install Visual Studio Preview first, the latest version, and then you just need to install the latest .NET SDK, which should be 5 preview. Here it is. Install this one depending on your machine. You may need to install Windows or Linux, it doesn't matter, just install it and you will see it in your Visual Studio. Okay, so first what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete most view related stuff like the www root folder, the areas folder. I don't need them. I don't need the views folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this error view model too. In the controllers, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to add catstagram to the ReSharper's dictionary so that it doesn't show it. And I'm going to remove pretty much everything from this controller. I'm not going to use views in my application, so I'm going to delete this Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity UI package. I don't need it. I'm going to need Anti-Framework Core, I'm going to need Identity, and I'm going to need SQL Server N2, so I'm going to leave them here. Okay, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to just set up the different files to make them cleaner and remove everything that is not necessary. I'm going to create the app in the following manner. Looks more clean this way. Okay, so in home controller, I won't be using views, so all my controllers will inherit from controller base, which is essentially the API controller class, which should be used when you are not using views. I'm going to mark the controller as API controller to make sure that I leverage all the goodies that come from this attribute. For example, missing the from body attribute on parameters and automatic model errors and so on. Then I'm going to just make an action result which will be marked as authorized, but for now authorized like this. The whole idea is to have for now return. I'm going to not write this on return statements on the controller results. This will be just a test action result which will validate whether my authentication is working correctly. Okay, so let's fix the startup. Let's remove all the unnecessary stuff. Let's make it more. I don't need a confirmation for now, so I'm going to remove that too. I don't need views, so I'm just going to use add controllers. And I won't need razor pages too. Good. Then I want you use the developer exception page. The error page is okay. I won't use these. I don't need that. I don't need that. And I'm going to say map controllers like this. This should be more than enough to map the default controllers. Let's run the app and see whether it will work. Okay, I have an error here. I don't need default identity, or I actually need that, but unfortunately identity check with identity row like this. This should be fine. Okay, let's add a route which should say controller for now. Throughout this series, I'm going to refactor a lot of the initial code I'm creating because I would like to make the app following as many best practices as possible. So we're going to use folder by feature architecture. We're going to make it cool. We're going to use a sync await all the way down. It will be a piece of art. Okay, let's hit /home. It works. So the next thing I need to add is the JWT authorization. Okay, for now I have an application DB context here, which inherits from the identity DB context, which is actually quite fine, but I'm going to rename it to catstagram DB context because application is just too generic. It won't work. I'm going to, no, let's use WillowCodeDB for now. And that should be okay for now. Okay, let me show you from where I'm going to uh, copy some code about the JWT authentication. This tutorial is working great and is one of the best tutorials on JWT authentications I found on the internet. I'm going to leave a link down below in the description for it. I'm just going to reuse some parts of the tutorial because there's no need to remember all the different technicalities. So first things first, what I need is I would need a model for my user. So I'm going to say models here and I'm going to add a user. This will be my user, which for now will just inherit identity user like this. Then I'm going to specify that the user is this user here like this, and I'm going to specify that the user is this one. I'm doing that because in the future when I start writing endpoints I will need different properties on the user entity, so I just make sure that I create it before I need it. Good. Okay, so next thing is what I would need. Just to make a small clarification, this tutorial is great, but it's still not using the default identity, which it's kind of not okay if you want to leverage some of the built-in uh, authentication mechanisms in ASP.NET. For example, password hashing, for example, easier creation of users, and so on. So I'm going to enhance the tutorial and I'm going to make it use the best approach possible in ASP.NET. Okay, so first I need the user entity. I'm going to need application settings. I'm going to add them in a minute. Then what I need to do, actually what I need to copy from this tutorial is part of this method. This method essentially finds in some hard-coded users the user with the password, which as you can see is not quite hashed, and then creates a token with this code. I'm going to copy paste this code just to create the token. And what I would need also is the startup, which setups part of the authentication. The startup is a bit messy here because the tutorial is made to be as simple as possible, but I'm going to refactor it to make it look better in one of my future videos. For now, let's make it work. First things first, I would need the application settings. So I'm going to say that I need to get section settings, or let's make it like this, application settings. I would need a class to correspond to that settings, application settings. In the settings, I'm going to need a secret with which I'm going to serialize the user and create the token. So I'm going to add the secret in a second. I'm going to say use application settings here, like this. Good. Then let's put some thises because I like them. I don't like them only here because it doesn't make the code as readable as possible. So I don't use this on the actual results. Otherwise, I use this because it shows me what exactly I'm trying to access, whether it's a local variable or whether it's a class level variable. Okay, so what I copied is that I want to get the application settings section from the configuration, which should be here. I'm going to add it now. Application settings. And I'm going to add some secret. This is going to be the secret I'm going to use on my uh, for my tokens. Something like that. Okay, next thing is I would need to get the application settings. Settings config. And I would need to add the following code, which essentially register the default authentication to be with JWT. Currently, I don't have the add a JWT bearer token because I will need to install it separately. So I'm going to just search it. This is the package I'm going to need. Microsoft ASP.NET Core Authentication JWT bearer. Installing the latest 5 version 5 preview. Okay, and now it should start working. The only thing missing is getting the secrets key from the application settings. Like this. As you can see, the configure services started to look a bit messy. We're going to fix that in my next video, in which we're going to prepare the project to look a little bit cleaner, because currently it has too much logic here in the startup class and we are not following the solid principles because essentially this class does quite a lot of things now. It prepares configurations, um, it prepares some JWT stuff, so we're doing too much in it. Okay, that's cool. And the last thing we need to do is just to add course. That's pretty much everything. We need to add use course because the Angular client app will be deployed on another server. So for now, I'm going to just allow any origin, allow any header, and allow any method like this. And this should be more than enough in the startup. For now, let's create identity controller. The identity controller should inherit controller base and should be an API controller and should have the default controller prefix. The problem here is that I'm repeating myself, so let's create a base abstract class called API controller, which is going to reuse this and it will inherit controller base. This way, all my normal controllers will reuse the functionality of the route, and I'm going to mark this as an abstract like this. Great. So how to wire up the register and the login here? First, let's create iActionResult register. Let's make it async all the way down. So I'm going to mark the method as asynchronous and I'm going to add task from iActionResult. I would need a model in which, no, not here, that's the data model. I have a model here which I'm Let's add a folder first because it's for the identity controller. So I like to put all my models in folders corresponding to their controllers. It's easier to find them. When I add the feature by folder by feature, I would need to move this, but for now let's leave it like that. Let's create register user request model. This one will have required username, public string password, like this. Cool, and I'm going to have an email also. If we decide to add some functionality about change password and such, we will need it. So in identity controller, I'm going to say I need register user request model. And here I will need a mechanism to create the user. Fortunately for me, the default identity has a class named user manager, which user manager, and the user manager class will allow me to create the model. Good. So what I would need to do is I would need to say, let's create some user. I'm going to await user manager create as async. And here I will need to provide the user. So let's make it like this. This will be the result because the create async actually returns a result. Var user equals new user. I need to set the email. Then I need to set the username, which should be model username. I have a typo here. Let's fix that. Good. Then I'm going to say create this user with the password provided from the request. If result succeeded, let's return http status code dot created, for example. This one wants let's return OK for now. I'm not sure what the client will expect, so let's put it OK for now, but otherwise, let's return bad request in which I'm going to pass the result errors property, which should be more than enough for now, but I'm going to sync that with the client and I'm going to pass better error response if needed. Okay, we created the register. Now we need to create the login. And in the login, we are going to reuse the code from the tutorial. Async task, I action result, login, and I need a login. Let's remove user. That's more than login request model like this. Actually, it's almost the same without the email, I guess. So let's remove the email and let's import that. Good. So the login will need a login request model. And here I'm going to reuse the following code. That's essentially the logic behind creating the JWT token. But before we continue, I would like to tell you where you can find my source code from the video. It's in my GitHub. You may follow me if you like. You need to find repositories, then find TV. That's the repo in which I'm uploading all the source code demos I'm using in my channel, so you can find it here. I will be extremely thankful if you give me a star. Lots of people already did. It will be very nice of you. You may also watch the repository if you'd like to receive notifications when I upload a new video with its source code. Usually I upload first the source code and later I put the video to be public on YouTube, so you will see the video before it is released to the mass public. Okay, so that's the repo. Clone it, play with it, take a look at it. I will be extremely thankful if you decide to give it a star. So I'm going to need that to create a token. First things first, let's inject options from application settings. Don't know why I named it. As you know, guys, naming is the hardest thing we need to do. But this is how programming works. Identity controller, app settings. Let's create a read-only field and let's use it here. I need to get the value from the options. That's important. Otherwise, the settings don't work quite well. Good. So this is the encrypted token here. What I need to do right now is I need to validate whether the user is logged in successfully and whether it provides correct information. So first I need to find the user by providing the username from here. If user equals no, return bad request, I guess, or unauthorized because the username is not correct. Then I need to validate the password, and fortunately for me, there's a check password async method in which I just need to provide the password and it will give me some result. I'm going to return unauthorized to here. Like this. I'm going to transfer this logic in a service in one of my future videos, because apparently the controller starts to get really fat, which is not okay. But for now, let's just make sure that all the authentication pipeline is working correctly. And what I'm going to use here is I'm going to say that I'm going to return action result of string, which returns the encrypted token in when we have a valid authenticated user. Let's make it consistent. I'm going to use action result and action result of that throughout my code. What we need to validate now is we need to check whether the identity controller is working correctly. Let's start the API. Let's go to Postman and let's create some requests. This is the URL. First, I need to add a post request to identity.register with some body here saying, first let's specify the content type to be application JSON, like this, then name, let's say I tested ESP.NET. I'm going to add an email, which is test@test.com. Let's use this email, and password is, oh, I will need to set some password settings because the initial ones are quite hard, especially for testing. So I'm going to say options password require digit false. Options password require lowercase false. Require non-alphanumeric false. Require uppercase false, and required length 6. Let's do it like this. Okay, this should be easier for testing. Let's create test 1, 2, and I'm expecting an exception right now because we haven't migrated our database. 4 or 4 not found. Okay, first things first. Let's add some route here. Let's try again. Sent 404 not found. Again. What's the problem here? I have, oh, that's an abstract class. That's not okay. The API controller should be abstract, not the identity controller. That was a nasty bug. Fortunately, I managed to see it. Let's hit that again. And 500 internal server error, ladies and gentlemen. That's the problem here, is that I guess we are not. I guess we just don't. Let's remove that. We just don't migrate the database. So I'm going to add an infrastructure folder in for us infrastructure folder. I didn't write it correctly. Infrastructure, like this. Then I'm going to add a class application builder extensions, which will have public static void apply migrations. This application builder app, and I'm just going to say using var app.services. Oh, well, doing stupid things. Application services, create scope. Then I'm going to say services.get service provider, get service, getstagram, db context. Then dbcontext.database.migrate, like this. And I'm going to call apply migrations here. Good. Let's start again and see what will happen. We're waiting for the database to be created. Done. It should be okay now. Let's create 500 internal servers error again. Where does it come from? Let's see. Register. I will need to. It's not working again. Specify /home 411 unauthorized. Okay, so there's something else going on here. Use exception page. Let's see. A suitable constructor for type identity control could not be located. Either the type is concrete or services are registered for all parameters of a public constructor. Let me just put that if environment is development, like this. API controller identity. Oh, that's protected, dude. Come on. Hit. Bad request. The username field is required because the name is not correctly written. Okay. Errors. Username. The username field is required. Oh, sent. And we're done. Finally, we have a registered user. Let's see the login without the email. I'm going to try to log in. Okay, I have a token, and let's validate that the Swash Home is working. For now it's not working and it's unauthorized, but let's add an authorization header, bearer, the token, send, and it's working. Great, guys. In this video we created the JWT Authentication, which was actually not that hard to implement. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to deploy the app on Azure, and it's very easy actually. Then I'm going to refactor it a little bit because we're having some not so cool messy codes here and there. Before I finished, I would like to thank my sponsors, which are Endeavor, Softuni, SmartIT, Nobohar, 1bit, Bellatrix, and ReSharper. Thank you guys, you truly rock. Endeavor is always for search for passionate developers, so make sure you check them out. And this is Softuni, SmartIT, Nobohar, 1bit Software, Bellatrix, and JetBrains. Thank you guys, you truly rock. You can motivate me to continue providing free education. Okay, for now, bye and see you guys in the next video.